I'm thrilled today to have the multimedia, internationally known artist, Carolina Caycedo, join us today from Bogota, Colombia. She's here to provide us a presentation of a body of new work entitled Agua Pesada, Alma Althaqil, Heavy Water in English. And it highlights this important new body of work, the importance of just energy transitions within a complex historical matrix of global extractivism. In this new body of work, Caycedo considers mines in the history of mercury and the economic and cultural landscape that is and was the kind of Arab and Spanish speaking geographies. She will say more about that. In our class, we are reading on extractive zones and racialized labor. And we had the opportunity to engage Caycedo's previous work on rivers, rios in the Cauca Valley of southwestern Colombia, and the many efforts by communities in struggle there to navigate the dispossession that is extractive and racial capitalism. In this new work, Caycedo continues to put community priorities at the center of her artistic agenda and her artistic imaginary, that through painting, sculpture, and single channel video, through objects such as amulets and many other forms of study, consider the materials and materiality that is at the heart of both an extractivist, but also seeking a post-extractivist imaginary and landscape. With Caycedo, we really want to pay attention to and ask, what are the kinds of art and art practices that consider energy transitions in tandem with the human and more than human relations that are both local and planetary? As always, Carolina, it's such a pleasure to engage you from Los Angeles to New York to Brown University now. And I really look forward to hearing about 35 to 40 minutes of presentation and then to engaging our students and our audience in lively Q&A. For those of you joining us from beyond Brown campus or beyond this classroom, feel free to use the chat box for any kind of questions you may have. So I'll leave it to you, and I thank you, Carolina, for joining us, and we look forward to engaging you. Thank you.
Gracias, Maca, and hola, everyone. I'm here in Territorio Muisca, in Bogotá, Colombia. I arrived yesterday. I'm super excited to be home, or one of my homes. And yeah, I wanted to focus on new work. This is the first time I actually present on this work. Also knowing that, Maca has known and written about my work in the past, and that the students have engaged with the work. So I feel this like a rich place and fertile place to present this new work with actually unfolds the last decade of work of Be Damned, that, as you know, has focused on the affectations of energy infrastructure on bodies of water and social bodies connected to those bodies of water, and also kind of following what is in the agenda of those communities that I've learned so much from, that have been impacted by large hydroelectric dams or impacted by mine tailing dams and their failure, what we call dam terrorism in Latin America. And so these communities that have been impacted, have been working hard also to not only adapt to this situation, but also find other ways of owning their energy sources, right? And escaping this hegemonic energy matrix. So they, at the forefront of a lot of communities in Latin America and across the Americas actually, is energy transition, but a fair energy transition. So energy projects that come out of the communities, call them rural, urban, peasant communities, that is small grids that are managed by and for the community themselves, but also matrices and electrical or energy matrices that allows them to continue with their life projects, which is staying in their land, quedarse en el territorio, staying in their lands, right? So this is an energy transition. A fair energy transition is one that is, not seeking to generate more and more energy or more and more money, let's say, gains, but an energy transition that allows for smaller life projects that are very close and in relationship with natural ecosystems to continue to thrive. And it's also an energy transition, what we call fair energy transition. This term is actually a term that comes out of fossil fuel workers. So it's an energy transition, and that's why it's called a transition. It's not going to happen in a year or two. It's going to take some time, but it's an energy transition that also takes into account the livelihoods of workers of the fossil fuel industry, right? And what's going to be the future of these workers and how are they going to participate in this fair energy transition? So I've been doing research in the last 2 years, visiting different communities. Some of them I've had a long-term relationship with. Others, I've started through this research. And one of the things I found is that there cannot be an energy transition without other sort of transitions and insurrections, if you wish, and emancipations, right? And the first one is food sovereignty, right? If you think actually food is our first source of energy. If there's no clean food, a fair food distribution and production, there's no way we're gonna, achieve other sort of transitions. There needs to be land and water sovereignty. And then, into that we can weave what we call, or for example, folks in Puerto Rico are calling energy insurrections, right? Energy grids that can be independent from corporate, colonial, oppressive grids. So giving you this background, I'm gonna just start to share my screen and get into it. So one of the things I found when I started this research was this 2020 report by the World Bank Group called Minerals for Climate Action, the Mineral Intensity for the Clean Energy Transition, which already I feel like it's an oxymoron in a way. And basically this report, which is online, and I encourage you to look at it and study it, it tells us that a low carbon future will be very mineral intensive because clean energy technologies need more materials than fossil fuel based electricity generation technologies. So we're talking about photovoltaic, solar panels, wind, geothermal are more mineral intensive in relation to fossil fuel technologies. And there's each mineral carries a different demand depending if it's a cross-cutting mineral, so a mineral that's used along all of these technologies that we just mentioned, photovoltaic, geothermal, wind, or it's only needed in one specific technology. There's also issues about technology and sub-technology choice, recycling of materials. So, the report delves into all of this, but basically the report gives us a scenario of 17 minerals, and they focus on those 17 minerals, which are the ones you see here, which are going to be intensively mined in the next 4 decades, from here to 2050, at a crazy rate, basically. And I focused on the 6th in the drawings that I will show you next, because those are the 6 minerals that the report predicts that are going to be, more mined. Also because they tend to be cross, they work across technology. So you can see aluminum, for example, is very important in solar technology, but also in wind, which is blue, and is also used in energy storage. Graphite, lithium, cobalt are, essential for energy storage technologies. We have nickel, cobalt, copper, and so let's have in mind also, the kind of traditional mining that we know about, this large open pit mines, but also, deep sea mining. Cobalt and nickel are elements that are found in deep sea and are, actually one of those minerals that are being searched for in our seas. And so these, I'm going to show you these 6 drawings that I made. They are color pencil paper. And just to give you a little bit also, all these images and new work have just opened last week, February 7th, or 2 weeks ago, at the Sharjah Biennial in the United Arab Emirates. This is the 15th biennial. It's the title of the biennial is called Thinking Historically in the Present. And I decided to show these because the United Arab Emirates have huge interest and investment to mine some of these elements in Colombia. So that's the reason why, you know, it was the moment and the place to show these images and this work over there. So this drawing is called Cobalt Intensive. And you will see that all of the drawings, the suite of drawings, include images of the labor force. In this case, the largest deposits of cobalt are found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and children or underage persons make part of a huge part of the labor force in the extraction of cobalt. You will see images of the process of transformation of the actual mineral into the technology. And you will see images also of the technologies, right? In this case, car batteries for electric cars and whatnot. There's also in all of the drawings, and you can see it here small in the lower right corner, a map with highlights of where the deposits, the largest deposits of these minerals are. These are drawings of aluminum intensive on the left and copper intensive on the right. In this case, I actually use aluminum leaf and copper leaf to gild part of the drawings. Let me see if we can see a detail. So here you can see part of the gilding in the aluminum intensive drawing. And so I wanted to make these drawings kind of, in a way, depicting a group of vignettes, and also using the framework of the World Bank report to speak about this energy transition, this clean energy transition, let's say, quote unquote, that the World Bank predicts, right? Which is a corporate, large scale one. Like here you can see the image of a large solar farm, a huge one, it's just very big. Right. And so this is the energy transition that the World Bank is offering and predicting. Large scale corporate in the hands of large corporations, international international capitals. This is the image of graphite. So this one I did with graphite, of course. Here's a complete drawing. The extraction of graphite has very, very harsh and toxic conditions. And of course, all these minerals and the extraction and the mine settings are very, very toxic for the labor forces. The World Bank report does touch upon that and gives some suggestions, but I find them very poor. This is nickel intensive. So we can see here images of deep sea mining, geothermal reactor, and then kind of the hell of the process of transformation of nickel from a raw material into the different technologies. And the final image of this suit is lithium intensive. It has this kind of triangular composition, as you may know. The lithium triangle in South America is one of the larger deposits, but also we have Thacker Pass in Nevada on Diné territory, where an actual, struggle is happening right now to protect the Thacker Pass, which is a sacred mountain for the Diné folks. So these are the mineral intensive drawings. The other installation that makes part of this body of work is actually Agua Pesada, or heavy water. Agua Pesada, the title actually comes from one of the names that alchemists gave to mercury back in the Middle Ages. So mercury, is particularly rich in synonyms or names. It was called Hermes, the hemiplegic. It was called the life of the bodies, the horizon, the water of the moon, virgin's milk, the turbid. Let's remember that alchemy has its roots in the Arab world, and Arabic as a language is super poetic. I kind of chose Agua Pesada, or heavy water, because it's very descriptive of what happened, of quicksilver as we know it. No, it's this liquid element that's kind of heavy. But other names, the faint-hearted, the living water, the water of glass, the servant, the fleeing servant. I love that one. Anyways, the Armenian. So Agua Pesada is an installation of 160 clay pots, or aludeles, which are bottomless pots. We call them furnaces in English. That is inscribed with a poem that I wrote both in Spanish and Arabic. So it's a bilingual poet. I actually co-wrote it with an Arab-speaking person. And that is kind of showcasing the economic and cultural connections between the Spanish and the Arabic word for mercury, which is azogue. So azogue, or azog in Arab means mercury, but we say azogue in Spanish. And the first time I heard that term actually was by doing field work with artisanal miners in Colombia, with people who washed gold in the river. They call mercury, instead of mercurio, they call it azogue. But azogue, azog, is also very close to the term market, mercado, in Arab, which is souk. It has the same etymological root. Mercurio, mercado, mercury, market, azog, souk, which made me think that there's a linguistic structure, a very ancient linguistic structure to how we know extractivism today, right? And the relationship between market and the early extraction of minerals, and how this is kind of, how we can find these relationships in this kind of etymological roots that are shared in these words. So the clay pots are modeled after the hornos of Bustamante, this is an image of the hornos de Bustamante, or the furnaces of Bustamante, which is a sublimation furnaces structure in the mines of Almadén in Spain, in Castilla in Spain. So actually the term Almadén means the mine or the mineral in Arab. So you can imagine that this cinabrium deposit, because actually this is a deposit of cinabrium, which is a red mineral that when it's sublimated transforms into mercury. Cinabrium is 75% mercury, 25% sulfur. So you have to sublimate it to have the quicksilver. And the mercury deposits of Almadén account for the largest quantity of liquid mercury metal produced in the world. Approximately 250,000 metric tons of mercury have been produced there in the past 2,000 years. And the name Almadén is from the Arabic word almadin, which means the metal. The sublimation of cinnabar is done through the furnaces that you see here, which is an aludel alchemical technology too. And this furnaces started functioning in the late 1600s. Due to the human toxicity of mercury and its byproducts, the mine has variously employed penal labor, so prisoners, slave labor, and also prisoners of war labor over its long history. The mine stopped working only in 2002, so 20 years ago, due to the prohibition of mercury mining in Europe. So our installation in Sharjah, and here you can see kind of I want you to focus on this lower section where you can actually see the structure. So these are bottomless clay pots that are connected to each other and then connected to the kind of ovens in each side through which the mercury would be cooked and the quicksilver would be produced. So our installation in Sharjah, replicates the same size of this pot. Of course, we couldn't make the complete installation as in Almadén. We had to reduce the number of pots, but we also replicated the kind of V shape, necessary for the sublimation process. And we inscribed the pots with our poem. And here you can see some images, kind of the dimensions of it, some of the inscriptions. And so the poem really is has its starting point of this, the confluence of Arabic and Spanish languages around mining technology and alchemical technologies too. And it tells the story of Mercury in first person. So it's Mercury telling its own story. Let me see if I can pull up really quick my poem, because I want to share it with you, at least some parts. So I will read a little bit of the beginning. And for those who are fluent in both Arab and Spanish, here you can see the actual text, so you can read it. And I'm just going to read the English version for you guys. Between cinnabar and person, I am Mercury. I become in between cinnabar and person. My volatile and erratic temperament, and actually this description of Mercury is actually an alchemical one. They describe the element as a volatile and erratic temperament. I connect the center of the earth. I concenter the universe. I dance the universe. I scintillate like a star from the center of the earth. Flare, light, dazzle, messenger minor. My messenger speaks to the stars from the center of the earth. And this text actually comes from the word that Arabic uses for minor. And the minor in Arabic, I don't know, I can say the word right now, but minor in Arabic, the description or the actual meaning of that word is the person who finds stars in the center of the earth, right? The person who finds that scintillates like a star in the center of the earth. It's super beautiful. But it's really interesting to learn how in Old Arabic, there's already a connection between the center of the earth and the universe, right? This connection that we find, for example, when we take medicine or traditional medicines, right? We have that connection, and we take these medicines to reconnect to the center of the earth and all the way to the universe, right? So the messenger, the miner, was already doing this, no? By finding these scintillating material, these stars in the center of the earth. Anyways, and so the text goes on and on, telling the story. We play also with some of the verbs. So we say, yo mercurio, tú tercurias, él cercuria. I mercure, you your cure, he her cures, we were cure. We become very playful with the text too. And we kind of go all the way until referring to the Convention of Minamata. And Minamata is a convention that was signed, I think in 2017, to stop the production and commercialization of mercury. And it's the first worldwide environmental agreement that was signed, a legally binding one. So it's very important. But let's come back to my presentation to see more images of the pots. So I collaborated, the pots were done in Sharjah. I collaborated with someone to write the text, right? Because I don't speak Arab. And then I also worked with a local calligraphy who could inscribe the pots, right? So collaboration is it's a very important part of my work. Just go through some of the images. And now, I'm at the point where the installation is there. The pots are actually all hollow, so they actually, are bottomless. And we did some tests of actually speaking through the pots, and actually sound travels. So I'm thinking now, how can I, give another life to this text in a performatic way? And I'm also looking to do maybe an annotated publication, because there was so much research and things we came up through the research that I think this text deserves to be published, but in an annotated way. But this is a little bit more about the Convention of Minamata. So it's a convention on mercury, a global treaty to protect the environment. The name comes after a Japanese city called Minamata, which is very important. The population of Minamata in the 60s actually sued a local company that was depositing mercury in the Bay of Minamata, and of course poisoning the fish. So you have a whole group of people poisoning with the hydrargia, which is actually the name of the mercury disease, which basically destroys your nerves. There's a recent movie actually with Johnny Depp that came out that's called that way, Minamata. It's the youngest global multilateral environmental agreement entering into force in 2017. Since then, the convention has been ratified by 137 parties. So here is who and why. Basically, mercury is one of the 10 top chemicals of major public health concern, according to the World Health Organization. Its exposure, even in small amounts, is the cause of severe health problems, loss of biodiversity, and climate change. And here is some information that if you go to the Minamata Convention webpage, you know, the convention goes all the way from addressing small-scale miners, like the ones I met in Colombia during fieldwork, who actually use mercury or azogue. So you need mercury. Okay, one thing I skipped and I need to get back. Why I wanted to address mercury in this body of work, because mercury is a case study that allows us to see our humanity relationship with a single mineral all the way from the Middle Ages up to, you know, today, from, you know, slave labor, toxic conditions of exploitation, but also understanding the importance and how fundamental mercury was in establishing large-scale extraction in the Americas and the global South. So when we think about extraction, we normally think about materials coming from the global South to Europe or to the global North. But actually, in the case of mercury and some of the mines that were established during the early invasion in the Americas, like Potosí and Mexico, first, these mines had to receive mercury coming from Almadén mines in Spain in order to amalgamate the gold and silver that was being extracted of Potosí until mercury was found locally. So we first have a movement of materials from Spain to the Americas, transported all the way from where it would arrive in the port to the mines to amalgamate gold and silver, to then this materials go back to Europe, right? So thinking about mercury as something that was fundamental in the establishing of extractive industries in the Americas. And having mercury as a case study to understand, you know, and to show us how a relationship with a particular mineral has developed over the centuries, and to think about these minerals that are, you know, that are we increasingly in demand for energy transition. If to rethink, you know, if we want to copy and kind of replicate this relationship that we have had with mercury to the point that we have to, you know, sign a global agreement to stop its production because of its toxicity and its implication in biodiversity loss and climate change, or if we can imagine other ways of relating to this increasingly in demand minerals. And Eritrea has become the last actually country that signed into the convention only 2 weeks ago, February 7th. So it's a convention that is active, it's active. So I really encourage you, for those who are interested in those themes, to become aware of it. And so we have been talking about kind of this more corporate, kind of profit-driven relationships to minerals, right? The future intensive, mineral intensive that the World Bank report predicts, a case study like mercury, that you know has you know touched upon the worst practices that humanity can have, you know, from using slave labor to transporting very toxic materials from continent to continent and whatnot. And then this other two parts of this body of work are showing and maybe imagining, or hopefully help us imagine other ways that we can relate to minerals. One of them is fuel to fire. So let me go into the video. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, the volume, there's no speech in the film, so it's a film that is focusing on gold, and though gold is not part of these minerals predicted, you know, it is a mineral that we have a very intense relationship with, you know, as humanity. And here in Colombia, especially where I come from, gold, you know, has been instrumental in all sorts of rituals, in establishing an economy too, and continues to be the livelihood thousands of people who are artisanal miners, for example. But gold also, and in relationship to this particular body of work and where it's being showed in Sharjah, in the United Arab Emirates, the importance of making this video and having it being projected in Sharjah at the moment is very important for me, because there is a United Arab company called Mubadala, which is the biggest state company of the United Arab Emirates, who has invested in buying land in a, I'll just let you see this little bit first. Okay, so Mubadala has bought land in Colombia, specifically in a moor or páramo, which is a high mountain moorland ecosystem called Santurban, and wants to exploit the large deposits of gold found in this high mountain ecosystem. If this happens, that would mean that the source of water for at least 2 or 3 cities in Colombia would be totally devastated. And so there's a big struggle from the community right now to stop. Unfortunately, some even environmental entities in Colombia have engaged in a process of rezoning and redelimiting what would be the core ecosystem of the páramo to allow for the extraction to happen. So it's a struggle that's happening right now. And so in this video, what I wanted to do is a pagamento or payback of gold to the water as a way, to protect Santurban. So I do believe that art and other ways of creative expressions have more than visual and aesthetic powers, but that have magical powers too. I consider a lot of my work as visual spells, and this would be one of those. And the fact that I can put this visual spell in the heart of the Emirates right now, for me, it's kind of my little contribution to this struggle that's happening, right? So I cannot be in the front lines, but I can do my own little rituals, and in this case, a pagamento to protect this páramo de Santurban. So there was another reason why I wanted to do the pagamento of gold, which is actually what we did is to release gold back into the river. And it's because I had been using gold for a number of years already. So I had been buying gold from artisanal miners that I've known throughout the years. So just buying the raw gold, and I already had a number of grams or ounces of the gold. And I have filmed other projects with it. Patron Mono is a water portrait that is actually filming this gold, and I've done other amulets with these golds. And I thought, okay, it's a moment that I can also let go of this gold and let it go back into the river, like pay it back, right? I already used it and gained from it, so it's time to pay back. And pagamento is a fundamental. Oh, so here we're saying Santurban is actually the only thing we say in the video. So the pagamento is not the first time I do a pagamento with my work. Pagamento is a fundamental ecological, but also economical practice and principle in indigenous worlds across Latin America. And it consists of paying back, right? Because we normally take from nature and from sustaining ecosystems. And the pagamento is a way of paying back, because actually, nature is not for free. We have to pay back, because if we only accumulate and accumulate, we get sick. Sickness comes from accumulation. So we need a payback, and there's many ways of paying back. This is my own way, paying back the gold. But pagamento is like, keeping the best seeds in order to put it back into the earth the next time of the, of sowing comes around. Or if you fish, let in the best fish that you catch back into the river. Or there's many other ways of pagamentos, right? Some of them are, very, very local and pertain to indigenous practices that, when you're not indigenous, you shouldn't know about either. So there's many ways of pagamentos, and I really encourage you to think, what are the ways that we can pay back to our sustaining ecosystems through art practice, but through everyday practices? So here's the moment of the gold pagamento, actually, which was crazy to film. We actually deposit large quantities of gold before actually capturing the scene, but we finally got it. So yeah, this is my little pagamento in honor of Santurban. But one of the ways that I'm considering pagamento, not only through individual work like this one, but as a general protocol of my practice also, is that one of ecological balancing too. Like I generate, of course, a carbon footprint through my work with all the traveling, using material, sometimes printing, transport of works, whatnot. So I've started a protocol also of doing a carbon accounting of my own work, and then, establishing a protocol for, I don't like the word of setting because it's very corporate, but of ecological through my work, right? And so that's a way of pagamento too. Like, how do you pay back that carbon that you're consuming? And the way I am doing it is to devote a percentage of the gains and of the cultural capital that I gain through my work back to communities who are actually doing the frontline work of environmental justice and environmental conservation from a community perspective, no? Okay, and then the other work that engage with these other ways that we can relate to these minerals are these amulets for fair energy transition, and that use the very same minerals and materials that are portrayed in the drawings I showed you at the beginning. So graphite, copper, lithium, gold, aluminum, cobalt, nickel, to generate these amulets for a fair energy transition. Again, so tapping into the historical, practice of art making in relationship to creating objects that protect us and that defend us, and that connects us, in ritualistic and magical ways to what surrounds us, right? And these are my amulets. And the amulets are responding to a research I did, also responding to the context of the Arab world where this work is being showcased. There's a long tradition of amulet making in the Arab world, very long, everywhere, no? But I was trying to focus on the tradition of the Arab world. So the tongues, like if you think about Roman tradition, when somebody dies, they would put a coin in their eyes to pay, so they could pay their way to the next world. In Arab traditions or Middle Eastern traditions, people folks would get a tongue. They would get a silver or gold or other material tongue placed in their mouths so they could talk their way through. And that's so beautiful, no? The difference between paying your way through or talking your way through, negotiating your way through. So these are two tongues that hang at the entrance of the space. You have to kind of cross through them like a portal. Tongues made of aluminum. This is a nazar, or like a evil eye protector made with nickel ore. And you can see how it's actually we created these kind of black acrylic, plastically oily stands over which these amulets are stand on. And here's the room where the amulets are showcased. And so you enter and see the amulets, and then through this door you go and see the gold video, Fuel to Fire. This is a burj, or a traditional tower, also from the Emirates, which are, towers to survey, to protect the land. It's called burj. It's carved in graphite. This is a amulet, which is a hanging one. It's called hard crust, soft tissues, and native metals, which refers to actually the material. So hard crust, this is a cobalt disc. Soft tissues, which are pearls, which actually are, built in the soft tissues of different clams and oysters. And native metals, this is a copper kind of raw piece. And it's taken the shape of a more kind of Chinese oriental kind of hanging charm. This little box is inspired by Quran holders. So along the Arabic world, there's many little boxes or tubes where you actually insert smaller prints of the Quran or papers inscribed with Quran verses rolled into little tubes. So this is made of copper and lithium here. And then it holds some lithium quartz. This is a copper pin made with a cobalt disc. Inscribed with a Pueblo people representation of the womb. And it's a amulet actually thinking about all the children involved in mining labor. This is a little hourglass with raw gold. Postponing the end of the world takes the title of a Ailton Krenak book, which I strongly recommend. And a little kind of banyan tree, which is a traditional tree in the United Arab Emirates, specifically in the heart of Sharjah. There used to be a huge banyan tree that would offer shade to folks. It's not there anymore because it was a centenary tree that already passed. But this one is made in copper. So these, with this, I kind of wrap up and just open the conversation up. Yeah, this is the first time I actually present this work in an academic setting because we just opened it a couple of weeks ago. So a lot of processing still happening, and really excited to hear your feedback, your criticism. So yeah.
That was just extraordinary. Thank you, Carolina, for that tour de force work. And one thing I'm struck with, and then we can open questions first here and then also online, is by your methodology and the continuities that I see in the methodology here and ongoing work, although it seems that you're just expanding all the time. And, there's something that I would reflect upon, that your work has always been research intensive as an artist. It's multimodal. It's thinking with medias and mediums on many, many scales and many kinds of aesthetics. It's interested in giving back. It's aesthetically rich and beautiful, I have to say that. It's working on scales that are really astounding, from this kind of complex planetary, the local, the large, the small, and then many registers as well, right? You have legal registers you were bringing forward, the World Bank, the local communities. So I congratulate you on all of that, but want to ask you if you see your own work as sometimes maybe as an alchemist of materials as well, right? Because you are transforming so many objects and conversations and dialogues in order to make a lot of things that are quite fractured, potentially, maybe more coherent. So just that kind of alchemy of your work and that labor and the ceremonial pieces, the performative, to not leave that out as well. So any responses to that? Thank you for presenting such incredible work today.
Yeah, I had never thought of myself as an alchemist, but I wouldn't, I don't shy away of, from it. Yeah, I'm an artist that I'm drawn to a lot of materials, but I don't master any material per se. So to be very honest, and I'm not interested in mastering it. So, very different from an alchemist who was very invested in, finding the way to produce gold out of, mixing and amalgamating different materials. And that's why collaboration is so core to my practice. Because, of course, I didn't make the pots. I didn't make the amulets. I didn't inscribe the calligraphy on the pots. I was there directing the film, and but somebody else was holding the camera. I do edit all of my films, so maybe that's where I I do my alchemy. But just to say that to not be fixed to any material does give me a freedom to then establish and understand what's going to be the best medium to explore and to present an idea and a body of research, and and some conclusions that come out of that. So I don't know. I don't know if I've responded exactly, but I wanted to say that I more than interested in kind of mastering a specific technique or the use of a material, I'm more interested in mastering processes of collaboration, of trust building, of responding to what's on the agendas of certain communities, and of exploring, what happens when, when you engage the public, in certain kind of questions and calls to action or thought processes, right? So I always say that, as an artist, my mediums are collaboration, trust building or protocol building. And then reciprocity, as you said. I think those are my mediums. And as an alchemist, if you wish to think about me, that's what, that's what I mix together. And then form follows, if you wish. Form follows after that. Yeah.
Very helpful. And I just want to remind the audience that's not in the room, if you could, feel free to put questions in the chat. We're happy to engage you. I'm going to open up to the members of the class right now and see if there are any questions here. Don't be shy. I'm hoping that someone will come forward and ask you. Yes. Okay, so I will turn to our speaker. You can introduce yourself.
Hola, Carolina. My name is Adelaida Tamayo. I'm from Bogota. It's great to meet you. And my work is my own research is with activists who are resisting state violence in Colombia. So I'm always thinking about the state and the government and how it relates to this type of topic. And I was impressed with the way that your research combines the work of multinationals and corporations alongside the role of the government. And one question I had, two questions. One is, this is more so thinking about the film that we watched, Land and Friends. What is your impression of the recent election of Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez? Has that changed the scene at all? Is there more hopefulness after this, or is it seen as kind of more of the same with the nicer? I'm just curious how that's influenced things. I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, I'm glad you brought that into attention, because Colombia, Philippines, and Brazil are the 3 countries with most environmental activists killed per year, and Colombia has occupied the first place, consecutively for the 3 last years at a crazy rate. The difference is crazy. And so the election, and that hasn't stopped with the election of Francia and Petro. That doesn't mean that that the election of Francia and Petro, especially of Francia Marquez, who is, is a Goldman Environmental Prize, who has survived murder attempts, who was displaced by war in Colombia, who is a Black woman. No, it's highly symbolic and actually brings a sort of hope that other elections haven't brought to the Colombian population, is that anyone can be in the position of power, right? Before that was just for oligarchy members. But the coming of someone like Petro, who was an ex-guerrilla member, who has a long history of actually kind of then legal participation in the, in the political arena in Colombia, as a mayor of Bogota, as a congressman, and then now of Francia, is who's coming from the basis, opens up the possibility for all Colombianas and all Colombianes and all Colombianos to participate in politics, right? And that's something that we didn't have that possibility before. But the fact that these 2 folks are now in positions of power, and other folks are in position of power, like the Ministry of Environment in Colombia is coming also from base environmental justice processes in Bogota. So I think that gives us a tremendous hope. The structures of violence in Colombia are very well established, so it will take a time to turn that around.
But it is interesting, thank you for raising that, the kind of epicenter of a certain critical hope, if you will, of the future, you know, many looking to Colombia in this moment. So thank you. Other questions first from here. Go ahead and then we'll go there. Yes.
Hi, Carolina. Thank you very much for your presentation. My question has to do with the materiality of your work. How can you, like, if you want to share a little bit about the limits and potentialities, for instance, from the visual, the bidimensional is what I say extractive ecologies that you have in your drawings, and then the three-dimensional sculptures that have this materiality, but also they like appeal to touch, like to a sensuality that is more direct. It's like the material is right there. So if you can understand.
Yeah,
Sorry, Amanda, can you just quickly introduce yourself? I'm
Oh.
sorry.
My name is Amanda, and I'm a grad student in theater arts.
yeah. You know, I'm so glad that you brought the sensuality in the question, because that's something that for me is very important. And I try to bring it through the video too. I hope that that came through. But I wanted to show that there's a possibility of essential relationship to materials that otherwise we've lost any sort of ritual sense about it. You know, like gold, we carry gold in our cell phones with any sense of ritual. And we have jewelry, yes, that we use to adorn us, but you know, the fact of putting that gold little pieces between the crevices of the body, right? I don't know if you had the chance of holding gold in your hand, raw gold. I've had it. I have that chance, and it's so different than when you have actually a ring that has been processed. So that sensuality in relationship to the body is very important to me. The pots too, you know, when I saw the Almadén mines and, you know, and the furnaces of Bustamante, this clay pots, you know, they were built by hand by someone, you know, many centuries ago. So I wanted to replicate again. So we found actually a place where these ceramic pots, they were all built by hand in Sharjah actually. So it is important, no, because the body is the first territory at the end, right? The body is the first tool for resistance, right? And the body, when the body is also resisting through art making or through creative process, you know, and sensuality is part of that, it's just counteracting hegemonic ways of understanding, you know, the body as a productive machine, right? So what are the things that we can do with our body that are not for profit gain, or that are telling other stories, or that are telling other potentialities? So that's something I think about. And actually, you know, going back to the drawings, the fact that, you know, I made them with color pencils, and the way they're showed in Sharjah is that they're not framed. They're actually just like hang with magnets directly on the wall. There's no frame or kind of, they're open faced, how we say in art, you know, they're open faced. There's nothing. It was also trying to tell a story through a material that's immediately recognizable too, so that people can connect directly to those stories that are told in those drawings, right? Like anyone can grab a color pencil and color in or draw something, right? It's not like an oil and a canvas, which are a bit more particular, or something, you know. I wanted to use also a medium that people can recognize, so they're not thinking, how was this made, or lost in that process or train of ideas, but just going directly into the information that's showed in the drawing, no?
So we have about 5 more minutes. Let's take another question here and then maybe turn to the Q&A in the chat.
Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm a first year in American Studies, and I'm very grateful to follow Amanda's questions because my question is actually about hands. Both in the film that we watched previously, Land of Friends, and also in Fuel to Fire, which thank you so much for sharing that with us. I was really struck by how much attention there was to the presence of hands in both like the labor of hands, but also in the sort of like caress and tenderness and sort of like tactility of closeness with hands. Which again, we've been thinking about extraction, and I read that sort of like in contrast to the violent sort of large scale extraction and like reminders of human presence. And I was just wondering if you could talk about the choice to focus so intensely on human hands throughout these works, and sort of thinking about that as a perhaps like an oppositional practice to these large scale extractions that you're responding to.
No, absolutely. The hands for me have always, and you know, I started focusing on the hands, and I have a whole body of work that's called Humane Materiale. I'll put it in the chat. And probably if you like Google my name together with that, you'll find some information. It's an open-ended series of film where I film actually people who work with their hands doing their trade, and they're filmed from a cenital view. And when they're installed, they're actually also installed or projected over a table. So when you stand in front of it, you could kind of almost feel that those are your hands doing stuff. But I always thought about the hands as something that in my body of work and in my kind of artistic language represents embodied knowledge. Embodied knowledge. So a knowledge that has to do with knowledge that has been inherited from your family members. Normally, and when you say caress, I'm so glad you said that and you noticed that, because normally a lot of disembodied knowledges have to do with processes of care, of taking care of others, of taking care of animals, of taking care of plants, of practices of sustenance, of maintaining life, and putting life at the center, which is at the core of feminism and of course of ecofeminism. And it has to do with memory muscle. That comes together with this embodied knowledge, no? So also it's an invitation for the public to recognize what are our own embodied knowledges, what are the knowledges that we have inherited from our abuelas and our tias and our moms, which is normally a knowledge that has been stigmatized in kind of more academic settings and you know corporate settings or hegemonic settings, right? So it's a knowledge closer to processes of sentipensar, no? Of thinking, feeling, and a process where those thinking and feeling cannot be separated. They're always together.
Good. We are wrapping up with just maybe to bring in both of these questions and see how you could end in 1 minute, okay? So there's a thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask in what ways materiality is relevant to your work. You've been addressing that, particularly in the case of Spanish vases. I wonder how the size, weight, and texture of the installation contribute to the unveiling of global mineral histories and networks, and thank you very much. So that's one set, and maybe you could just pause for a minute. The next one is, how far do you see the continuities between colonial interests in mono crops such as sugar, coffee, and the minerals, gold and silver, and current neo-colonial interests in mineral extraction in Latin America, something that we've been talking about, we'll continue to discuss today. Are there parallels in the logics used to justify these discourses? So anything you want to respond to or just wrap up in this last 30 seconds?
I mean, I think I addressed the materiality already in some of the answers or previous answers. And of course, I mean, the plantation mentality, you know, if you think about sugar, coffee, the plantation mentality is one that continues to be alive in our countries in the global South, continues to be perpetrated through plantations of sugarcane. If you see Valle del Cauca in Colombia, it's a huge sugarcane plantation, that's it. And through processes of mineral extraction and of mining extraction too. Where still, you know, people who have access to these jobs are those who don't have any other choice and, you know, basically have to engage in this very toxic, or people who are then cleaning up the mess, you know, who are doing the cleaning up of these mineral mines that are being closed, for example, right? Who is cleaning up those messes? So, you know, those idea of sacrifice zone, like if you see about the recent spillage here, the train spillage and the burning of those chemicals, there you go, a sacrifice stone immediately established through the burning of those chemicals. And, you know, the fact that people cannot return to their homes, but who has the choice to then go to a second home? Really? How many people have second homes in the United States? So it's a plantation mentality that continues to be established and through which tons of people continue to be oppressed and tons of ecosystems continue to be converted into sacrifice zones.
So thank you, Carolina, for giving us so much fuel for thought and action and activities, and for your own deep engagement as artist, alchemist, and so many other things. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy your time off in Colombia. Thank you for everything.
Gracias.